What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. I am your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
And this is a fun episode today because we're going to be talking about why you're not actually in a caloric deficit and or why you're making mistakes that's preventing you from actually losing weight. So what inspired this episode is I've overheard people, I've spoken to people, and they've said, oh, dieting's great, weight loss is great, but calorie deficits don't work for me personally. It's my hormones or my body just doesn't work like that, or that I'm big boned. And this isn't to say there aren't reasons that make it harder for people to enter a deficit, but saying I can't be in a deficit, I'm trying to think of something so outlandish, but it's like me saying I can't see the sun or something. Like it's not a realistic thing. A deficit implies it's like you being in a negative with your finances. It means you have less money, you owe more money than you have. And a deficit is quite simply that. It means that you're actually consuming less than you're actually putting out, than your body is burning. And there's a lot of different processes that actually cause our body to burn. And this is where things can get complex and hormonal issues. But nonetheless, at a certain point, you will enter a deficit. We can all enter a deficit, and that's what will create the effect of weight loss. A lot of people will think they're in a deficit and their weight won't go down, or they'll go to the scale, they've done everything right for a week and their weight goes up. Reality is you're not in a deficit. And once again, there are external factors. Maybe it's the time of the month and you're seeing some bloating and more water retention, and maybe your weight goes up and it's not reflective of where you truly are in your journey. And that's why I recommend weighing in at least 5 times a week, getting that average from those 5 weigh-ins and continuing to do that week after week and learning about yourself. If you're eating super late, you know those weigh-ins are going to be a little bit higher. If there's a certain time of the month that causes your weight to pop up, identify that, be aware that weight's a little bit higher, and you can start to disassociate from this weight, and you can start to manipulate your information to be hyper accurate so you can actually create change. I'm very aware of my numbers. I know how to lose fat. I know how to put on muscle, and it quite simply is either being in a surplus or a deficit from my calories. So I want this episode to be a loving call out for you, to showcase to you that you actually can lose weight, to really break down perhaps some of the misconceptions you've had about deficits and weight loss, and how I have over 4,500 transformations now, albeit not all of them were deficits and cutting. But nonetheless, this is something I understand. It is a science, and we are really excited to jump into it. And like one of the first things I want to say too is a lot of your numericals and simple calculators just aren't going to be facts. So a lot of people want to lose weight, listen to a great podcast like ours, will say, hey, start by looking at a calculator, understand your TDE, which is TDEE, so total daily energy expenditure, and identify how many calories you need to eat to survive, and then kind of factor in from there, how can we reduce it to be in a deficit? So if I put all my data in that calculator, I'm super active, all this stuff, it may tell me 4,000 calories, right? And naturally, I'd say, okay, if I eat 500 less, I'm going to be in a good spot. 3,500, I'd be pretty full. For me, I know to lose weight, I need to be a little bit sub 3. And a lot of the time, like these calculators are just a guess, right? It doesn't take into account the full sum of what's going on. It's going to be an approximation. And that's why I like these as a starting point. And then you can identify in the first few days, I've eaten at 3,500, I'm full every single day, and my weight's gone up, I'm in a surplus. That is not a deficit. So you got to keep chopping that down. And a lot of the time where people go wrong is they'll assume if they're in a deficit of like 100 calories per se, that they're going to lose 700 a week. And if they got to lose 3,500 to lose a pound of fat, which is about what it calculates out to, then naturally they'll be there in give or take like 4.5 weeks, right? And it seems super linear and obvious like that, but weight loss doesn't work that way. And that 3,500 calorie per pound is a very, very much so an oversimplification. And there's a lot more you can get in the weeds about this, and I don't want to waste too much time on it. But once again, these are just things that give you an idea. They are not fact. An easier and better way to stop, I can tell you right off the hop, is to get a calculator, get an idea, track where you're eating, understand the average of those numbers, bring that down, see if you're actually losing weight. If you're not, bring that down a little bit more, but give it some time, be aware of it. And I find that as like the easiest way to actually track and make sure you're having linear weight loss. Like with my clients to a T, we can lose half a pound a week. We can lose a pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds. And of course, this is reliant on adherence, obviously. And any variables to this will throw it away. But caloric deficits can be quite simple, but they can also be extraordinarily complex. So one of the first mistakes people do is misusing these calculators and factors. And another common mistake that Kyle's going to jump into is just the confusion that can come from fitness trackers as well.
Yeah, so fitness trackers, like I've used one for, I want to say 10 years I've had an Apple Watch. I've never used my Fitbit, my Apple Watch, like some people have Aura rings, like Whoop bands. Never used any of this to tell me how much I should be eating. The reason is, and also how many calories I'm burning. It's been shown over and over again, studies that I think it's about 18 to 85% inaccuracy, depending on which device it is. But to give you an example, it may say that I burn 4,000 calories. Let's just use that number on a day-to-day basis. So if I were to start to look and see, okay, well, how many calories do I need to eat then to maintain my weight? I'd say 4,000. But it just overestimates an insane amount. I don't know why that is, but it's something that can throw people off a lot, because then you start to look at these numbers and the data and start to think, oh, well, if I eat this much based off of how much I'm moving, then I should be able to see weight loss. And there's so many real life examples as us, helping over 4,000 people, having our Instagram with all of you messaging us, which is awesome. Even in-person clients, I would have some people come up to me and they say, hey, it's crazy. I just I checked out my app finally and it says how many calories I'm burning. I'm at like 3,600, and I know the individual, I know their job, I know what they do, I know what their metabolism's like based off of like working with them, and I'm like, that's just not true at all. So you want to avoid this. And the biggest thing I'll say within calorie deficits before I let Josh keep going is that most people, I would just say straight up when they say these things, I just say, you're not in a deficit. Like there's some people who would say to me, hey, Kyle, I'm trying to eat a lot better, but I'm not losing weight. Answer is, you're not in a deficit. Hey, Kyle, I'm, in a deficit, but I'm not losing any weight. You're not in a deficit. So it's a harsh call out, but it's the thing that a lot of people need to hear, because that's what's holding most people back. But anyways, that's my talk on the devices, and I'll let Josh keep carrying this episode.
Yeah, so it's very nuanced is what we're getting towards, and weight loss takes into so many factors, because there's also emotional component, there's a celebratory component as well. You could be really good and then you can have a life event come up, you can be in an extraordinary situation where perhaps you can't eat how you normally like to eat. There's also eating the right macronutrients. And the other thing is, obviously, as you lose weight, your body's energy needs actually will decrease. So your body's really unique, and there's two in particular hormones, so ghrelin and leptin, and they will actually dictate how full you are when you eat, and they will also dictate how hungry you are, which is pretty crazy, because both of these become suppressed as you diet down. You get this negative effect where you're more hungry and you're less satiated and you're on less calories. So we'll have a lot of people come to us and they'll say, hey, I've lost 30 pounds, whatever it may be, but I can't get that last 10, that last 20. Now I like to call this like the deep waters, because this is where you need to get a little bit more exotic and you need to do some unique things. You can't just keep chopping calories to oblivion, or you're going to be starving. It's going to be miserable, and adherence is going to slip and fall out the window. And that's where you can use advanced strategies to obviously optimize this. Think diet breaks, think carb refeeds, think intelligent adjustments with routine and cardio and whatnot. There's a lot of different things you can do, but what we really wanted to establish here is that a calorie deficit will absolutely work for you. This is the best, most consistent, and most linear way to weight loss. And if you've struggled, you're fighting a tough battle, especially if you were relying on some of the things we mentioned previously, because it's just going to work against you. And as you can see, the nuance of it is so important. So we are actually going to go ahead and just jump through what we actually do to help our clients lose fat. But if you've been struggling and you just feel helpless and you don't know what's going on, and you're like, Josh, Kyle, thank you. Bless your hearts. I've loved everything you've spoken about so far, but I feel more confused. We're going to try to clarify that for you in the next part. But we highly recommend, let us do the hard legwork for you. To us, it's so black and white. We can detach ourselves emotionally from it. Our goal is going to be to actually have you eating more calories, eating more of the foods you love, spending less time in the gym, but spending it more intelligently and actually just getting more deep instead of wide, to actually make sure you can see progress that is consistent, that's sustainable, sustainable, and that doesn't all slip away when you give it away. It's amazing to starve yourself out. Kyle, for his cut, could absolutely just say, hey bro, I'm doing a 2-week fast, maybe be in the hospital, just be drinking a little bit of water and be nearly dead. He's going to lose some fat, but after he gets back to eating, that's going to come back. He's going to mess up his health. And all too often people mess up their health, they mess up their psychology, they mess up their relationship with food by making these horrible decisions and just by shortchanging the work that needs to be put in place. And that's why we've established a one-on-one coaching protocol. We're going to walk you through everything: nutrition, accountability, training, to optimize these factors so you can lose the weight and keep it off, and do it in a very calculated approach, as you see us talk about. So if this is you and you want to lose fat once and for all, keep it off, really work one-on-one. We do custom check-ins every week. We look at all your data. We put it all in a spreadsheet. We populate all of it so you can see the linear progression of loss. We look at your energy levels. We're going to hold you consistent and accountable to it. We have unlimited text interaction. We have every mechanism for you to succeed. All you need to do is take that first step and reach out. Just message me fat loss at Colossusfit, and I will help you one-on-one. But for those of you that aren't ready to make an investment in yourself, maybe you aren't hungry enough to see that change. I sure hope you are, but we're going to break through what we actually do to make sure our clients lose fat. So what's number one, Kyle?
First of all, it's just going to be simply tracking. So that alone is just going to help you with accountability and awareness. And I'm blown away every time I take a step back and, just don't realize how much it actually holds me accountable, because, there'd be days where I wouldn't hit my protein. There's days where a lot of people don't realize this, but you make worse decisions based off of not having that accountability. So for example, if you don't have to input any numbers, you just naturally be like, oh, well, I don't know the numbers, who cares, right? And you're not hitting your protein, you're not hitting fiber, you're over your calories consistently. How do I know this? I've been there myself, and it's a way of not being called out, essentially. So simply put, just keeping track of everything. We like to use MyFitnessPal. There's so many incredible apps out there, but I will say, there's a difference between tracking and just guessing everything and just putting it in, and there's tracking well. And this is where so many people struggle. I would say this is one of the biggest things holding people back if they think they're in a deficit. It's that they, yes, keep track of their calories. If I were to say, hey, can I see MyFitnessPal? They're like, yeah, I've got everything in here. And even oftentimes I'll get my clients to to add me as a friend, and I'll look through, and I find that when I see things that are whole, let's just say you have a chicken shawarma and I see chicken shawarma, and then I see the dinner and it's kind of just all populated together. I'm like, I could tell that this is what's causing us to just not see changes yet. So then we make those changes accordingly, because we start to put ingredient by ingredient. We start to put actual proper portions. Like I said, the biggest difference for people who are succeeding, if you're tracking, is just not doing it properly. So we like to use food scales. As we came down here to Florida, the first thing I made sure to do is pack my food scale. Measuring cups are fantastic. And then just really allocating for every single thing that's put in. And I know it's different for each person, but let's just say you happen to go to Costco. I use this example, and you go grocery shopping and you start to grab all the snacks and whatnot. You may not put that in there, but that's going to be a couple hundred extra calories. If Josh is having some, food from his little one and, finishing up or doing whatever, and he's not putting it in there, could be a couple extra 100 calories. If you have coffee every morning and you're not putting your creamer in, couple, maybe not 100, but depends on how much coffee you have. So these are the things that a lot of people are struggling with that I wanted to mention, and it makes such a big difference.
Yeah, and there's people that maybe look at their credit card statements, for example, and there's people that have budgets and really learn that data. They learn their habits, and we've kind of taken that to fitness for our clients, and we have this amazing spreadsheet that takes 2 seconds to fill out each day. I've done this for over 10 years, and I maintained a lean, muscular physique this whole time. Surprise, surprise, there's a secret. It's just doing these things well and doing them consistently. And even within that spreadsheet, it's taking a deeper look into the data that matters. So I actually track how full I was in the day, so I can get an idea of my satiety levels. I have that populate into an average. I track my workout intensity. I track my energy levels of that day. I track my fiber. And I just really look at the data that moves forward. I can see my adherence, how close I was to my protein and calorie goal. I could think I knocked it out of the park, and it could say on average I was 300 calories over that whole week. For me to identify that data, I can also start to self-correct. Whereas if we never look at data, we have this delusion that we've done so well. And perhaps there's been a week where you've been dieting, you've done everything right, you've said no, you've done extra workouts, you've done everything so correct. You go to that scale and you go to celebrate your weigh-in, and you're heavier. And you're like, what the heck? This is ridiculous. That's because you're not identifying the right data, or you're not actually having the right checks. And most importantly, as we said, you're probably not in a deficit. And the next biggest mistake that really just tanks deficits, if you will, is consistency. So if I'm in a deficit of 200 calories for 5 days, I'm in a 1,000 calorie deficit. It is very easy on Saturday and Sunday to go over by 1,000 calories. Even alcohol in and of itself has 7 calories per gram. If you're getting a fancy cocktail, it's sugary with maybe 2 shots in it. Very, very easy for that to be 300 calories. If you're someone who drinks like a moderate amount, for some people, perhaps you have 2 drinks on Saturday, 2 drinks on Sunday, you're having these drinks, that's 1,200 calories. Obviously, this is an extreme example, and you can have different things like seltzers and whatnot, but you can see how you can undo that whole success of that week of you being in that slight deficit just from that. And then chances are, if you have those drinks, you're going to go out and get some food. Maybe you're just going to have one day where you let loose and have a cheat meal. And that's why I'm not a fan of cheat meals. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3,000 extra calories. You're going to have to suffer all week just to fix that gap. So it's not representative. It's like me saving money on eating food all week, then going out to the fanciest restaurant, just ordering whatever I want. I'm going to spend way more than I would have than just being moderate with it throughout the time. And that's why we like 80-20 rule in the weekend. If you want to fit in a couple of drinks and food, like make the necessary steps to make that happen. Utilize protein fasting, eat more whole foods around it, allocate for it, make an intentional decision. Any of these things will fix a lot of that attitude. But if you're one of these people that is just losing during the week, gaining it on the weekend, like it's miserable because you feel like you're working so hard to get nowhere, and it's just highs and lows of you're suffering or you're eating whatever you want. And it's just a really unhealthy way to approach this, and it really generates like a horrible physique. And if you have extra stomach fat and you've been doing this for a while, like this could be you, and like this can easily be rectified with some behavioral changes. And that's why my coaching, I just don't give you a program. I look at these behaviors, I look at your energy levels, I look at your satiety levels, and I try to find what works best for you and to propose better long-term lasting solutions so you can be moving towards progress than away from it.
And my next and biggest tip here is to adjust calories as necessary to maintain course and overall fat loss. So what a lot of people struggle with is they think that the success they've had in the past, if they just consistently follow those numbers, they'll always see change. That's 100% not the case. And that's where a lot of people get stuck within a calorie deficit that they think they're in, is their body starts to adapt. You know, even things happen in life where changes need to be made. And as your coach, that's one of the most important things, is being able to meet you where you're at, to be able to make those adjustments, to increase your protein, to decrease your calories, or maybe increase your calories. And you need those changes week to week in order to see success. Like I said, most people will struggle because they just have a set number. They think that they're just going to always be able to be in a deficit and always follow it. But that 100% isn't the case at all. And you need to stay away from making this absolutely huge mistake.
Yeah, it's not a static thing. And there's weeks where maybe you'll want an unload week for a vacation. We support clients to show them how they can go on a vacation, eat a bit more food, and not undo progress. Like I said, diet breaks, reverse diets. Like once you finish a diet, and actually understanding the path of where you go is so important. But the deficit that starts you off won't be the same for you to finish. And another mistake people make is they'll enter way too heavy of a deficit, and then they have no wiggle room past that. They have absolutely nowhere to go. And that's why in our coaching program, week to week, we don't want to over make changes, but we'll make necessary changes, whether it's adding fiber for satiety and therefore aiming to improve food quality, increasing protein to make sure we're getting the right amount for that, for satiety, for energy, for muscular development, adjusting calories. Maybe the deficit, we lost more weight than we needed to, and we can give you more food. Why would we not? So we can provide that opportunity. So that is incredibly well said. And any more tips you want to add, Kyle?
I did want to just give 2 more tips that I forgot to mention. So cooking is one thing that, and we have it written down here, Josh's great point here, is something we need to do more often, especially because I find a lot of times the people that are struggling, and I use an example of one of our friends. He was struggling with losing fat, and he actually unfortunately still is. But you know, we were out, and for us, we're able to eyeball things a lot better. It'll never be perfect, but it's easy to tell yourself like what you think something should be. So we had sweet potato fries, and he was like, oh, this is on my fitness pal, it says 150 calories. And we're like, dude, this is at least 350, and you're not even including the sauce here, right? So that's just a small example. I think if you were to really be serious about it, you'll also save a lot more money just from trying to cook more at home. And that makes such a big difference. And the second thing I want to say before I end this off is just like, do the things that actually matter. So most people will say, they'll hear us talk about a measuring cup, a food scale, maybe tracking everything, I'm like, it's too much work. But if I were to say, hey, fasted cardio, fad diet, specific supplements, like it's easy to just be obsessed with that because it's like sexier and it seems easier as well until you start spinning your wheels and never seeing change. So yeah, just try to really do the things that we're saying here that make a big difference and move the needle. But like I said, stop feeling helpless. You deserve to feel your absolute best. With summer coming up, we always say summer bodies are made in the winter. You deserve to feel incredible, whatever you're wearing, and to just not feel embarrassed. Like we see a lot of people say, I'm just scared to take off my shirt at the beach. A party that I'm going to, I have to wear a bikini and I'm just nervous about it. You don't deserve to feel that way. You put in work, you show up to the gym, you do cardio. Now the nutrition has to match that, and you need a game plan that's created for you. So simply put, message us fat loss on Instagram at Colossusfit, COLOSSUSFIT. I promise you we'll change your life with our money back guarantee, and we can't wait to help some of you people out.